Every year families have to deal with the horrors of a loved one vanishing without a trace. Some are lucky to have found their loved ones after only a few hours or days. Others are not so lucky. Here are 3 kidnapping cases that had unfortunate endings. Dawn Magyar was believed to have been abducted on January 27, 1973, after grocery shopping in Owasso, Michigan and Shiawassee County. She was last seen by a friend who briefly talked with her in the supermarket checkout line and saw her leave the store with her purchases. After Magyar failed to return home that day, her husband reported her missing. The following day, police found the borrowed truck which she had been driving in the shopping center parking lot. Her purchases were inside and her keys scattered at the truck, suggesting a forceful abduction. Despite a massive search of the area involving 4,000 local volunteers, Magyar was not found. 3. On March 4, her body was discovered by 2 young brothers, Wayne and Bill Summers, who were tapping maple trees on their family farm in Saginaw County, Michigan. The medical examiner found that Magyar had been raped and shot 3 times in the head and back with a .22 caliber gun. An autopsy indicated that she had likely been killed within 90 minutes of being abducted. The bullets came from 2 Remington and 1 Winchester brand ammo. In June 1974, a .22 caliber revolver, believed to be the murder weapon, was recovered from the Shiawassee River in Owasso. The revolver was rusted and unable to fire, but still loaded. It contained 3 spent rounds that matched the brand of bullets that killed Magyar. The gun was traced to a pawn shop in Yuma, Arizona, where a man named Robert Shaw had purchased it in 1965. In 1976, Magyar's wallet and identification were found on the bank of the Shiawassee River, in the same area where the .22 gun had been found. In 1995, the state police decided to reactivate the case. A detective sergeant reviewing cold cases realized that advances in DNA analysis, which had not been available as a forensic tool when the earlier investigation was conducted, might yield evidence to identify Magyar's killer, as the county police had collected sperm specimens from Magyar's body at the time of the crime. As police investigated, they obtained Winch's DNA from saliva on cigarette butts which he had used and discarded in his trash. They found that his DNA matched the samples taken from the Magyar crime scene. They also determined that Winch had been in the Owasso area visiting a friend around the time of Magyar's murder. Unable to establish any link between Winch and Magyar, investigators believed that Winch had seen the young woman in the store or shopping center parking lot and randomly chose her as his victim. On March 7, 2001, Winch, aged 60, was arrested and charged with Magyar's murder. He could not be charged for kidnapping or rape because of the statute of limitations on those crimes, 10 and 6 years, respectively. He was tried in November of that year at the Livingston County Courthouse. He claimed in his defense that he had had consensual sex with Magyar. But experts testified that Winch's DNA was left on Magyar during the brief time frame that she went missing and was killed. On November 27, 2001, Winch was found guilty of first-degree felony and premeditated murder. In 2002 he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Magyar's mother Eleanor and brother Larry Swan and his wife were alive to see justice served for Dawn. The father Ralph Swan had died in 1988. Colette Haram left her home in Normanton Lane, Keyworth, shortly after 8 p.m. on the 30th of October 1983 to walk the 1.5 miles, 2.4 kilometers, to her boyfriend's house. She was usually collected by her boyfriend, but his car was off the road. She was last seen at about 8:10 p.m. turning into Nickel Hill where she stopped to talk to a group of friends, and witnesses reported hearing a woman screaming followed by a car driving off at speed shortly afterwards. The alarm was raised when she did not arrive at her boyfriend's house, and after a series of frantic phone calls, police were called at 10:30 p.m. to help family and friends search for Colette. At 9 a.m. the following morning her naked body was found dumped in a field about 1.5 miles from where she had been abducted. She had been raped and strangled. Police launched a murder investigation, and on the 7th of June 1984, the murder of Colette Haram was the first case to be featured on the newly launched BBC television series Crime Watch, a program which reconstructs major unsolved crimes with a view to gaining information from members of the public. As a result of the appeal, police received 400 tip-offs and were able to eliminate 1,500 suspects from their inquiries. However, the killer remained at large. The case was featured for a second time on Crime Watch's 20th anniversary show in 2004. In 2008, advances in forensic technology allowed Nottinghamshire police to put together a DNA profile of the killer, and officers appealed for members of the public to come forward with the names of suspects who could then be DNA tested using a mouth swab. In June 2008, a young man, Jean-Paul Hutchinson, was arrested on a motoring charge. DNA swabs are routinely taken from anyone who is arrested, and his DNA was a near-identical match to the profile of the killer of Colette Haram. However, Jean-Paul was only 20 years old at the time of his arrest and DNA swab, so he had not been born at the time of the murder. The match provided the police with the breakthrough needed to solve the case. Paul Stewart Hutchinson, father of Jean-Paul and then aged 50, was arrested and charged with the murder in April 2009. He was remanded in custody. Originally, Hutchinson tried to blame the murder on his brother Gerard, who died in January 2008 and who had been cremated, but DNA tests ruled Gerard out as his DNA was held on a hospital blood sample and didn't match that left at the scene. Hutchinson was held on remand after his arrest and entered a plea of not guilty on the 5th of October, but changed his plea to guilty at a pre-trial hearing on the 21st of December 2009 at 8 a.m. On the 10th of October 2010, Hutchinson was found unconscious in his cell at Nottingham Prison. Paramedics were called and tried to resuscitate him. Hutchinson died at 9:58 a.m. in an ambulance on the way to the hospital. It is believed he took an overdose of medication, but a post-mortem examination was inconclusive. On the evening of December 20, 1984, Jonelle was performing in a holiday concert at Intra-Est Bank of Denver as a member of Greeley's Franklin Middle School choir. Her father was at his other daughter's basketball game and her mother had traveled out of state to be with Jonelle's ill grandfather. At 8:15 p.m., Jonelle arrived home in Greeley, Colorado after getting a ride from her friend, Deanne Ross, and Deanne's father. Shortly after 8:30 p.m., Jonelle answered a phone call and took a message for her father. The phone call was the last time anyone was known to have spoken with Jonelle. Her father arrived home at 9:30 p.m. and found the garage door open, but no one was in the house. Jonelle's shoes and shawl were near a heater in the family room, a place she often sat. Jonelle's older sister, Jennifer, got home at 10 p.m. but had not seen her. Their father began to worry and called the police. The police arrived at 10:15 p.m. and found footprints in the snow, indicating that someone had been looking in the windows. There were no signs of a struggle or a forced entry. With snow on the ground, Jonelle's father thought it unlikely that she would go far without shoes. For several weeks after the disappearance, law enforcement placed Jonelle's birth mother, Terry Vieira Martinez, under surveillance without telling her that Jonelle was missing. In 1994, Jonelle was declared legally dead. In 1997, Gloria Matthews received a letter from Vieira requesting permission to visit Jonelle. Vieira had used a search consultant to help locate Jonelle. The Matthews notified Vieira about what happened and the families became friends. Years after Jonelle's disappearance, her parents moved to the Philippines. They are currently retired and living in Costa Rica. Jonelle's sister married and moved out of Colorado. On September 13, 2019, Greeley Police Department announced that Stephen Dana Banky, a former Greeley resident who ran for governor in Idaho in 2014 and 2018 and for lieutenant governor in 2010, was a person of interest in Jonelle Matthews' abduction and death. On Wednesday, September 4, 2019, Twin Falls, Idaho police searched Pankey's condo under a warrant that stated investigators had probable cause to believe that Pankey abducted and murdered Jonelle. Pankey and his former wife lived about 3 miles from the Matthews home, and he had been a youth pastor at the church the Matthews family attended. Greeley Police Commander Roy Smith stated that Pankey had made repeated efforts to speak with detectives about the Matthews case, but refused to answer questions. One detectives traveled to Twin Falls on August 15, 2019. On October 13, 2020, Pankey was indicted on charges of first-degree murder and kidnapping in Jonelle's death. He was held without bail at the Ada County Jail in Idaho until being extradited to Colorado. Stephen Pankey was 69 years old at the time of his indictment. Thank you so much for listening. I do hope to be able to record with my own voice soon. Unfortunately, COVID is doing a number on me and my voice. If you haven't already, could you subscribe to the channel? It will mean the world to me if you did. Until the next video.